After the collapse of the Soviet Union, Ukraine gained independence in 1991, and its map looked like this. But today it looks like this, with the Ukrainian peninsula known as Crimea controversially annexed by Russia, and other areas now under Russian control. And here's why.
Ukraine is an Eastern European country, about the size of Texas, and has a population of about 45 million. Before it broke away from the Soviet Union in 1991, it used to be called the Ukraine, a name that probably came from the word for borderland. Which makes sense because it's wedged between Europe on the west and Russia on the east.
Most people who live in the center and west of the country speak Ukrainian, but as you move south and closer to the Russian border, most speak Russian and tend to have stronger ties to their former Soviet identity. This is a consequence of it being such an integral part of the former USSR, during which both Russian culture and language were at the forefront of everyday Ukrainian life.
Ukraine has been pulled between both sides for a very long time. Russia spent 2.5 centuries trying to make it more Russian, going all the way back to Catherine the Great. So when the current president, Viktor Yanukovych, rejected an economic deal with the European Union and accepted a $15 billion bailout from Vladimir Putin, it looked to a lot of Ukrainians like he'd sold out their country to the old Russian overlords.
The deal would give Ukraine political and financial support, but instead Yanukovych was going forward with a Russia-focused Eurasian Economic Union. Protesters flooded the streets of the capital, Kiev, and the crisis known as the Euromaidan Revolution ultimately led to Yanukovych fleeing the country, and later, of Russian military intervention in the southeast. Because in the midst of the unrest, Russia sent special forces into the Crimean Peninsula. It was there that the majority of Ukrainians claimed Russian as their mother tongue and felt stronger ties to their eastern neighbors. In what some call a referendum at gunpoint, the people overwhelmingly voted to leave Ukraine and join Russia.
To Russia, Ukraine is its vital near abroad. You couldn't get more geopolitically, industrially important to Moscow. And in 2014, they kicked out a pro-Russian leader, and the Russians responded by sending a covert force and annexing the peninsula of Crimea. They then sent slightly more covert operations into the eastern city of Donetsk, where government buildings were taken over, and then militia, a lot of whom had some pretty serious Russian military support, started taking territory.
In July 2014, the crisis went international after the downing of a Malaysian Airlines passenger plane in Ukrainian airspace, killing 298 people. Independent investigators found it had been hit by a Russian-built surface-to-air missile in Ukrainian territory.
Russia-backed separatists have been fighting against Ukrainian forces since 2014. But this year, Ukraine says Russia's gathered nearly 80,000 troops at its border. Russia's deployed troops in Russian-annexed Crimea in the south and along the border with Ukraine's Donbas region in the east. Now, the Russian government says it's a reaction to what it claimed are NATO plans to push troops closer to Russia's borders.
The geographic location of Ukraine is very important to both Europe and Russia. If Ukraine leans more Eurocentric, that puts European and NATO influence right on another one of Russia's borders. And if it allies with Russia, that brings Moscow's influence deeper into European territory, also threatening NATO. Russia actually supplies the EU with about a quarter of its natural gas, and about 80% of that travels through Ukraine. Ukraine was accused of skimming gas in order to feed its domestic needs, and that wasn't appreciated by Russia or the EU. As a result, gas running through the country was in part or completely cut off at the source several times over the years.
Well, in the Russia-Ukraine, everybody needs to understand the Crimea, the Donbas region, they voted to rejoin the Russian Federation. That's Russian territory. This whole thing started with Ukraine basically declaring war on Russia. Yeah. Claiming they are going to take back. That's Russian territory. Then NATO started sending literally tanks, munitions in by the hundreds. President Putin countered by the thousands. The last count I've got, 10,000 tanks, 7,500 self-propelled artillery pieces, nuclear munitions, tactical, and this is where it gets really important, frontline fighters with nukes. Russia has hauled out their ICBMs. We've moved, and here's where it gets interesting, we've moved 3 of our state-of-the-art missile cruisers in there, and President Putin made a statement. I'll tell you one thing, that you can always acknowledge the brilliance of someone who is brilliant. He's brilliant. And he said, if one missile leaves any of your ships, the missile frigates, he said, I'll sink them all.
Russia announced Thursday it would be ordering troops to return from the border with Ukraine. The call is an apparent end to a substantial military buildup of tens of thousands of soldiers over the last few weeks, which had alarmed Western powers. Russia also pulled additional troops out of Crimea, the peninsula it annexed from Ukraine and occupied since 2014. Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu said he had ordered troops involved in exercises to return to their bases by May 1st, as they had completed what he called an inspection in the border area. However, military hardware will be left at a city near the border. Russia said it will be used again in another big exercise later this year. Moscow has not provided any troop numbers, but a Ukrainian spokeswoman said earlier this month Russia had deployed 50,000 new troops. That's on top of a permanent contingent of soldiers kept at the border and in Crimea.
Hey guys, it is Adam aka Marf, and we have a crazy update. This is absolutely insane. So we wanted to update you on kind of what was going on with Ukraine. Now they're going to pull back, they say, their troops by May 1st, but they're leaving their vehicles, including those nuclear-capable remote-operated vehicles. The Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu, who had called the buildup a test of Russian military readiness, said that the units deployed to the border area had shown their capabilities and now returned to their regular positions. What do you think, Dex?
Total about face. Like, oh, guess what? We're just kidding. It's an exercise. We're going home now. What? Yesterday you were on the, you were foaming at the mouth.
So they have also at the same time closed down one of their major straits, which since 2019, they have changed rules with that strait, basically said that all international ships have to give 45 days notice before they even come through. Lots of strange things have been going on with kind of their strait there. But they have closed that, and they say that that part is part of a military exercise. They are keeping it closed. It says, out of Moscow, Russia's defense ministry ordered a partial pullback, and it says partial, and every wording of this says that a exercise ended, and they are pulling back the exercise, part of the exercise, and they're still keeping the other exercise closed, which is the strait. Why are they doing that? Now, as far as 3-4 years ago, they were predicting that this strait, the strait by Russia, was going to be a huge part of them taking plans into the next step. In fact, they have predicted, and experts and analysts have said, that the next land grab would not actually be an ex-Soviet land like Ukraine, but would actually be European. They say that they are posturing and setting up for some sort of European land grab.
I think that I read this morning that Russia is backing away from the Ukrainian border, which surprised me.
I would guess that anything that Russia does, we have to look at them as, essentially they're magicians, and they're distracting you with one hand while they're doing something else with the other. That is the best way to look what Russia is doing, particularly in regards to the Ukraine.
Мы действительно не хотим сжигать мосты. Но если кто-то воспринимает наши добрые намерения как безразличие или слабость и сам намерен окончательно сжечь или даже взорвать эти мосты, должен знать, что ответ России будет асимметричным, быстрым и жестким. При этом у нас Я просто вынужден это сказать. При этом у нас хватит терпения, ответственности, профессионализма, уверенности в себе и своей правоте и здравого смысла при принятии любого решения. Но надеюсь, что никому не придет в голову перейти в отношении России так называемую красную черту. А где она будет проходить, это мы будем определять в каждом конкретном случае сами.
Thank you very much for your attention.
Спасибо.
Thank you and goodbye.